use? What up, Posse? Sorry again. Kind of internet issue. But this is Brandon. I'm here with Robert Rudman, aka the Ravishing Robert from Mattel.
Uh,
So how's it been going with doing stuff during the pandemic?
Good, man. It has, we've been making it work. Fortunately, in SoCal, we've got nice weather, so been able to go outside, and I've done things like finally taking up surfing. So,
Oh, there you go.
yeah, this is a good time of year apparently to take that up. So, my oldest kid started taking lessons, and then I was like, well, I might as well do this aside of him. And then it just wound up being like a good excuse to be outside and be safe. Plus, I've been collecting like crazy.
Oh yeah.
Shocked at how many packages has been coming, because usually I would just like go to the store and just be able to do a little bit of hunting and kind of do a little bit of like a sneak up to my area up here every now and again, so it didn't look as much, but not so much anymore. So
yeah, all the Amazon packages starts piling up.
Yeah, but this is research purposes.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. You gotta see what the competition's doing or see how it turned out.
Yeah, I mean, and there is truth to that. I just happen to love my research.
There you go. So how long have you been collecting, and then kind of what was your first step into collecting?
Collecting, I mean, collecting in general is always, I think that I've always been a collector. Like when I was a kid, I was fortunate to grow up in the golden age of toys, I think. It was like Saturday morning cartoons, so it was He-Man, G.I. Joe, the Star Wars figures, the LJN wrestlers, the Secret Wars, like those figures throughout the time. So it was like always like the first stuff. And I had like a decent slice of stuff. Like I had like the Millennium Falcon, Ewok Village, but I didn't have it all. I had friends who had it all, and I was always really envious of that. But I had my fair share. I was always kind of chasing that dragon. And then it would kind of like, my collecting habits would transition, as I would find new interests. So when I like started getting into baseball, I amassed a huge baseball card collection. And then it transitioned into like movie collection. So like my VHS and DVD collection was huge. And then, my comic collection was just like full, like long boxes and trades and all that stuff. And then it kind of wound back into action figures. Once I started working at Jack's, I started like dabbling into it. And when I got into Mattel, I really started getting into it. I think it was like when I moved out to LA, and then I started going to Comic-Con.
Yeah.
And I remember it was the Marvel Universe Sentinel, which was, I don't know if you can.
Oh, nice. Yes.
Yeah. So that was the one that was the exclusive that came in the blister box, in the blister case. Because they sold it retail, I think, with Wolverine back in the TRU days, and this one has the gold face. The one that was sold at retail had the silver face. But when I got the Sentinel, I was like, well, now I have the Sentinel, and I have to have guys to battle the Sentinel. So it kickstarted me starting to, and I always loved 3 3/4 inch figures.
Okay, so you really liked when they started doing the Legends in the 3 3/4 before they moved back into, because like didn't Hasbro, like once they got the license from after Toy Biz dropped it, they started doing just with the 3 3/4, and then they finally brought back the 6-inch.
Brought back Legends, yeah, and it was a little bit at the sacrifice of the 3 3/4 inch, and you really felt it. Like it no longer the torso articulation or the wrist articulation. It just kind of felt like that that they were investing more in the 6-inch scale. But I was like all in with the with the Marvel universe, and then eventually, it became Legends with that line. When before I married my wife, when we first moved in together, or no, this was just when we got married and we got this place, and it was in this room, and now I've got all my 6-inch figures up. I was like, okay, let me empty out, and I opened my trunk to bring it out, and I took it filled.
Oh gosh, yeah, just to the brim.
Yeah, and she was like, I knew you had some, but I had no idea what she was like. I feel like you've been hiding this from me. I'm like, well,
yeah. She looks up annulments. She's like, how? She's like, I didn't know he had this many toys.
Yeah. And then as I started working more and more into it, it's I eventually graduated. The industry changed, so they started becoming less invested in 3 3/4-inch scale, everything into the 6-7-inch scale, and I just kind of like rode along with it. My 3 3/4-inch stuff is now with my kids.
That's good. Yeah, I was gonna say, I didn't know if you did what Matt does and just keeps them in a bin in plastic baggies, or if you sold them all.
I do. I'm trying to teach my kids how to do it right, because I do stuff in the bags, and I'm trying to teach them, like, when you take it out of the bag, put it back into the bag so that way it doesn't get messed up. But it's a weird. I mean, he doesn't have kids.
Oh yeah, he doesn't have kids. But Brian, I guess, does the same thing. But he'll let his daughter play with all the stuff, and same with Mark. But
yeah. And I kind of like was having that. It's a little bit of like an internal struggle. It's like the reason why I did that was I initially had when he was about my youngest age, so about like 4 years old. And I was like, okay, now he's old enough, I can bring him up here. And he would see, like, oh, Spider-Man, I want to play with Spider-Man. I'd be like, okay. And he would take them, and he would start to bash. I was like, no. So you have to use your
do it very, very gently.
Yeah, but which, a kid isn't going to do. So I was like, okay, the figures I'm not going to have, let me give them to them. Because I didn't want to, like, I love my collecting. I love my figures, but I love my kids too.
Well, yeah, and when you're at a certain age, I feel like when you're a kid at a certain age, like my nephew, I gave him before I moved out to Minnesota, I gave him a lot of my old like Ghostbusters and Lego stuff, because I'm like, this stuff I'm not gonna display because I beat him to hell when I was a kid. Right. So let's continue it. It's not a new, like, oh, I spent $100 on this figure, and I'm not going to give it to a kid to play with.
Yeah,
but,
he's not.
Yeah.
But I was like, and there's also like a little. It's that, and then a little bit more when it's like when you're a dad, because it's like I want to have my collection, but I don't want to be that dad who's like, oh no, you can't play with these. These are dad's toys. So, and it's also like a little bit of the passing of the torch thing about how cool the figure is, and like I remember. So now that we're in an age of distance learning, they, and my oldest is in first grade. They're trying to do the best that they can. The school they goes to understands their position, so they're like, as long as they're there and they're occupied, that's okay. So I had I brought down his basket of wrestling figures, and I was working, and he was so excited. He's like, Dad, come down here. He's like, I posed them out just like you. Did I do a good job? And for 6 years old, he was like, he understood the basics of like how to get a dynamic pose, and he was so proud of himself. It was a cool.
You're moment. Like, son, you're a man now.
Yeah, that's.
You learned to pose your figures.
That's right. Now get a job.
Yeah, right. Because you have to pay for more figures.
That's right.
But so then, do you kind of also do you do like the whole like, oh, I'll get one from my display, but then I gotta get one for the kids, you know?
Um, a little bit more recently with the with my older one, I got the classified Cobra Commander.
Oh, nice. That's a nice figure.
But this guy,
Yeah.
and, um, and he saw it and he's like, "Oh, is that for me?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, and I was like, "But do you like it?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Well, why do you like it?" And he's like, "Well, it just looks really cool." And I was like, "Do you want one?" And he's like, "Yeah." So that's going to be one of his Hanukkah gifts is
Oh, nice.
a Cobra Commander. So when there's stuff that seems like it really strikes their fancy, or there are characters that I know that they like, yeah, yeah.
Nice. I was built an excuse. Like I can't say no. Like, come on. I was like, I'm trying to bond with my kids. Like if you're
The thing is, it's like the more with like stuff like the Elite line and with Legends, with Multiverse, you've got so many updates of these characters that I can like rotate the old ones out, and those are the ones I bag up and put in a box. And so they've always got like an Iron Man and Spider-Man, a Captain America, Wolverine, and they
like the core, like the good base sets of like what you
even more than that. It's because I don't have the room.
Nice. Did you speaking of X-Men and Marvel, did you back the Sentinel?
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
I had a couple of friends that did that. One of my co-hosts, Mark, he's a huge X-Men and huge Sentinel fan. So he's already had like all the Toy Biz and the other types of Sentinels. But he's like, I had to get 5. Like you can't just get one. So he's like, I just maxed it out.
I was like wrestling around with that because I was like, man, I feel like one, I went to support it because that I love the guys who work on that team, and I want to support them and what they do, and what they do is what I'm a fan of. So, but it's expensive.
Yeah, exactly.
The good thing is they give you like a lot of bang for your buck. But I was like wrestling around with like, should I get it? And then I was talking with Steve, and he's like, you got it. He's like, you got to get it. And all it took was that. And I was like, okay, I don't get it. Yeah. But then he was like, you got to get at least 3. And I'm like, I've got 2 kids.
Yeah.
I got 2 kids and all. I got to explain that somehow. I was like, one, I could.
Well, you could resell one and be like, oh, that goes towards your college fund. Because that market is, especially because it's different than like the barge where it's like that's too big to like reselling. It goes for a lot, but it's also a pain in the butt to find somebody that's willing to drop that. But a Sentinel, you have so many X-Men and Marvel fanatics that would be like, oh, I missed it. Like, I'll pay this for for a Sentinel.
I've got really bad foresight for stuff like that. I'm always like, no, this is good. But yeah, you're right. Over a G now, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't get the Razor Crest though.
Yeah, I didn't either. I was debating it, but I don't like the 3. I'm not a 3 3/4 guy very much, but
no, nor I'm not that anymore. But it's the same thing as you were saying with the sail barge. It's like I don't know where to put it. It's amazing. It's awesome. Yeah. People who got it, I'm like, man, you're like bravo, like lucky for you. But like, I barely got room for all this.
Yeah, and also like I'd be so afraid of it fell, or if one thing inside of it fell and knocked everything over, then you got to open it up and be like, put all the figures back up.
That's true, especially out here, because it's like, we get it's earthquake country, so a little bit of tremor, all of a sudden this has a major domino effect, and then all of a sudden I'm in a big reorganization mode.
Yeah.
If something that expensive and that big, it does come with a base though, right?
The barge, I think so, and the
Razor Crest.
The Razor Crest, I think that was one of the last things they unlocked was like a flight stand.
Yeah.
So it doesn't look like a very big stand, but hopefully they mold it into the, it can just fit into the bottom of the ship.
For that much money, it better be
sturdy. Yeah. So to circle back, so what is your exact like position in Mattel, and like what is just like a dummy's guide to what you do, just since most people might not understand, and I know I don't understand, but
I am the brand copywriter for WWE and Masters of the Universe, the toy line for that. So people hear the name copywriter and it kind of gets split because some people don't really get it. Some people think it's like a copyright attorney. I'm like, you don't want me giving you legal advice. I actually had someone who actually contacted me. They were like, I had a question about like, someone's trying to do something with like my YouTube, claiming like copyright violation. And I'm like, I am the wrong person to ask that. You don't want my advice on that.
You don't want me representing you. I'll show up to court dressed like IRS.
That's right. That's right.
This is the only example I know of how to dress nice.
So copywriter, just think about it like a brand writer. So like voice of brand.
Okay.
Anything, advertising companies, advertising agencies, marketing agencies, they all have like a copywriter. In my position, it is backup packaging. So right here, I have Walter.
Ooh, the Walter.
Yeah. And so all that's kind of the stuff that I'll write. Something and Walter is like a little bit trickier.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't, it's more of a description of what he is. This one leans a little. So what I'll do is I'll listen to promos, both the promos that the wrestlers cut, but then also the ones they'll do before pay-per-views. Morrow was a great source because he did such good research into nicknames, into providing a lot of flavor, stuff like that I could lean into. So this one is kind of like more of like describing the action of this match against Pete Dunne. But then you've got, I haven't broke the perforation for our final house. But, the Bray Wyatt stuff is here, I'll read it and you'll be, yowie wowie. Hey, boys and girls, welcome to the Firefly Funhouse. It's a very special place that Bray Wyatt built for you, so Bray and all the Fireflies could be together forever. You never know who might drop by. Why, Bray has all kinds of very special friends for you to play with, like Mercy the Buzzard, Abby the Witch, Ramble and Rabbit, or even the Boss. So join them, all you Fireflies, at the Firefly Funhouse, where the fun never has to end. You'll play all day and maybe even learn something too. Bray Wyatt will always light the way, and all you have to do is let him in.
Nice. I like that, and even though it's like the PG era and not like any Mattel would ever clear this or WWE, but at the bottom just be like, it's such good
yeah,
and just like blank it out.
It goes through my mind, and I try to sneak like little Easter eggs like that in. Like a couple people pointed out on the Mae Young copy where she had a hand in making the Attitude Era.
That is hilarious.
Yeah, to the undiscerning eye, it would just slip through. But people who know. So something like Bray, I'll watch all of the Firefly Funhouse bits. And it's like, like what's the cadence? How does he do sentence structure? So that way you can really capture their personality.
I didn't know if you were. Did they ever let you have like email one of the superstars, be like one of the big names, like just to be like, hey, what do you want on your thing? Like, do you want us to highlight anything?
No, not usually. When I remember when Hawkins, we were doing his Elite, and on the back of do I have it? Yeah, I've got it up here. Actually, hold on. So the Hawkins figure, right?
Oh, the Chase one, very nice.
The Chase one, that's right, and signed. And I'm an amateur, so it's signed in just regular ink. This was when they did they did a spot with Alexa for an Elite Squad spot with Alexa. So I was like,
nice.
So when we were doing Hawkins packaging, he was on a losing, he was doing the losing streak gimmick.
Yeah.
And I emailed, so we can't talk directly to the superstars. We have to go through the proper channels. So I emailed WWE, and we have where they're from, how much they weigh, how tall they are, and their finisher. Now, for someone with a losing streak,
yeah,
what's their finisher? So
doing the JOB.
Yeah, so
Okay.
so finisher is NA.
Oh, nice.
Not applicable. Which was perfectly appropriate. I always thought that was kind of funny. So it's like on rare occasions like that, when the one time that I did get a chance for a sit down with one of the wrestlers was the last in-person Comic-Con? Because that was the one where Zach and Kurt hosted. No, it was the one before that. Because Zach and Kurt and Matt Hardy was also one of the guests.
Oh, okay.
Comic-Con panel, and this was when he was in the middle of doing his Woken gimmick. And at the time, we were getting ready to do the Ultimate Deletion.
Oh, the one that everyone wanted.
It was great. It was great. And then, TRU went down and we couldn't get it out. We were trying to find a home for it and couldn't, so it needed to be repurposed. But that came with Vanguard 1. It came with the Mower of Lawns, and it came with Skarsgård, the Dilapidated Boat. And if you remember, whether it was the Ultimate Deletion or any of the stuff that they did in was it Impact or TNA?
Yeah, whatever. I feel like it was during the transition of TNA going to calling themselves Impact. I think that was like the height of the Nero and the
exactly. All of these like gizmos and gadgets and have personalities. Like the way that Matt talked about them is that they have souls in and of themselves, and they were reborn with, and they had a giraffe that was the incarnation of George Washington. Weird
Oh,
shit.
jeez.
So I went to the back panel to talk about these characters in this universe. Usually on an Epic Moments, I would talk about the moment itself or the superstars or whatever. But this one kind of felt weird and special. So I wanted to do like a first time in the line for all of these new characters. So I got a chance to sit down with Matt as he kind of like got into his Woken persona, and he explained to me the personalities of Vanguard 1 and Skarsgård and the Mower of Lawns. And I took that and I transitioned that onto the back of the Epic Moments, and in a indirect voice, but unfortunately it didn't see the light of day.
Well, at least the Hardy figure. I have the Hardy figure with Vanguard 1 in the boat.
I know
it was just missing the Mower of Lawns, right?
Yeah. But hopefully, I think it's like something where it's like we got it in the back of our mind. If there's ever an opportunity to get something to get it out now, I always thought it was funny, like if we were to ever get like Super Crazy or Hoovy or
yes,
one of the Mexicals. And
we're not Mexicans, we're Mexicools. Like that was like just like the Kerwin White thing. It was like such at the height of a weird era where it wasn't like WWE got away with that kind of stuff. Like it was like the end of like that kind of thing where people weren't being like, oh, like look what they're doing here, because it was pro wrestling. It's kind of like if people know, they know it's an act, and it, even though it seems like, oh, it's like it's getting over, they're getting paid. I don't think most of them like I'm getting a fat paycheck because people are loving our gimmick.
Yeah.
Like it's not overtly like I mean like I remember in like I think like the 70s they had like in the territory days they had like one dude that was literally like a Nazi or a KKK member or something like in the South like and he'd be like a heel and he'd beat him up.
That wasn't Fritz von Erich. His original gimmick
I
was like,
think oh yes yep it was like
and
some kind of like ambiguously like German-ish but you'd assume it was like a Nazi because I mean his heyday was around like not that long after World War II.
yeah,
I think right yeah.
yeah. So it was like all of the villains were like either German or
Russian
or yeah, well in the 80s it was Russian because that was Cold War era,
mm-hmm.
and uh, and, and then the Japanese, right? Because it
Yeah.
was because that was also the villains were it was the axis of evil, so they pulled from it, and
I mean, just like comic books did. I mean, come on, like the most famous covers are Superman and Captain America beating up Hitler, or like Batman fighting the Japanese. Like
that's right.
it happened. And we're not the only country that does it. But to get off my soapbox, but
We're just kind of we're in definitely like a much different place now, and they definitely couldn't get away with that now. We're in an era where it's like a lot more taking ownership of it. Like back when I was a kid, like you had like adorable Adrian Adonis, who was like back when people really didn't understand LGBTQ stuff, so it was like a you saw this great big fat guy who came in and he was dressed in like really awful makeup and he's like went on to whatever the Vince McMahon talk show was and was like, yes, I'm gay, and people were booing him. That was the gimmick.
because I made him a heel, yeah.
Yeah, back in that time. Whereas now you've got like Sonny Kiss, who like totally like embraces this side of him, and he's just it's much more of like an expression.
Yeah, but also with Sonny, it's. I remember I tweeted at him before just because after I first saw him wrestle, it was like the character, the time amount that he used to put his character and his wrestling style to mesh, like kind of just like Velveteen Dream, like it goes together. Like it's just like, oh, this is how I'd imagine. This is a realistic. Like this is how this person is fighting with their personality. It seemed to match their personality.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I totally agree.
Yeah, I think like Goldust was one of the people like it kind of broke the barrier. People ended up loving Goldust, even though like if that was like 10 years before, they'd be like, oh, he's a heel because he's such a a weirdo, and like it started out like that, but then it kind of they morphed it into to not just be like this person's just a freak because of what they like.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And it's the same way with like with racial stuff. Like I mean, rewind not even that far ago. Someone like Mustafa Ali would totally like be in like a turban or something.
Yeah,
like,
he would have been who was
the Italian guy who wound up being like, oh
Davari's person. I can't remember. Davari was his manager. Oh, Muhammad Hassan.
Yes, Muhammad Hassan. Yeah, and he wasn't even Middle Eastern. He was Italian. Yeah. But now it's like you've got Ali and he. I mean, right now he's doing the whole retribution thing, but still, it's like he's going through this character transition, having nothing at all to do with his race and religion. And I think that's actually like a really good statement. Wrestling has got this like weird, cartoonish lens that it reflects our society through, and I think it's like now it's taking that. It's a little bit more. It's interesting. It's a little bit more mature because we can't get away with that stuff. On the other hand, they need to kind of find a way to like, okay, now that we can't make these obvious, almost like cheap pokes at ways to kind of get people to understand good guy, bad guy dynamic. It needs to be like a little bit more, it needs to be a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? It needs to be, it needs to just be like a little bit more thought through, a little bit more organic.
So speaking of wrestling, I'm a huge wrestling fan. I'm like the wrestling guy in the group here for when we do the webcast. But growing up, who was your top? Like, who was your top babyface, and who was the one that you hated the most?
The So, all right. So when I grew up, it was in the rock and wrestling era. So it was like very easy to say like, oh, you know, I was a Hulkamaniac. And true, like when I like watch videos or whenever WWF came into town, I couldn't help but, you know, like pop for Hogan. But I had like a really weird taste in who my favorites were, because at the time Hogan was in his feud with Orndorff,
Mm-hmm.
and I always wanted Orndorff to win.
Were you like a heel? Like, do you kind of gravitate towards the heels as you got older, or just?
No, not necessarily, because like my other favorite guys, like it was right. I remember the first match that captured me was when Tito Santana reclaimed the Intercontinental title in the steel cage match. And I was all about Tito Santana for a little while. I loved the way that he moved. I loved the figure four. This was when he was doing the figure four as his finisher before the flying burrito or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like when like eventually they were like, yeah, we're gonna be calling Flair.
Yeah.
Gotta stop doing the figure four.
Well, he and Valentine were in that like battle of the figure four thing. So I liked Tito, and I liked and then like for tag team for some reason like the Killer Bees. I liked I liked these guys who tended not to be top guys, but I wanted them to kind of like to get elevated more. But I mean, when you think back, I mean, Orndorff was a top heel, and then when he transitioned to babyface, he was always in a top program. Tito was always kind of like just right underneath, and I like the Killer Bees because they were the high flyers of the time. Yeah. But you know, as a you know, I was like a fan of Macho. I was like really happy when Macho turned face. I was a big fan of the Bulldogs. Yeah, I mean, when it came down to like the heel, I wasn't necessarily like a huge fan of the heels growing up. But with the exception of Savage, yeah, I think that for me, it's kind of like I kind of like rooting for the underdog.
Mm-hmm.
I really like seeing like the underdog.
So like you all like the yes movement and like, you know, like, oh, is he gonna like this guy is gonna scrape and claw his way to the top.
Oh, well, like one of my favorite moments all time was when Mankind beat The Rock on.
Yep.
I mean, what an ultimate underdog kind of story.
I love Mick was one of my favorite, just mainly because he was a fellow like chubbier guy. I'm like, if he could make it, like I could be a wrestler. But then I was like, I can't take that amount of pain. Like he just is able to go to another place.
Did you ever meet him?
No, I never got a chance to. But I've always wanted to. Like he came out here for doing his comedy show, but I couldn't. I had something to do during the weekend he was here.
He came out here to do a signing at one of the local indie shows. I got a chance to get a figure signed by him. I had him sign his new book, and he and I got into talking a little bit about writing. Because I really admire the way that he writes. Like he writes a personal place, and he definitely got like a very distinct voice. It was weird to kind of like, you know, studying all these writers, and Mick Foley happens to be one who having a really influence. Well, I mean, just his approach to it. Yeah, I mean, so those were like some of my favorites growing up. I'm trying to think about like who else during the time. Those were like the primary ones. I was a huge Hitman fan, so it's like another guy who was when I was a kid. He was part of the tag team scene, and then he went singles before going back into tag, and then getting his real first singles push for the IC title. So I was really on board for that. It was kind of like a similar feeling with the Rockers, and you know, kind of like wanting them to get like a little bit of a tag team push. But that being said, you know, I mean, I'm not above loving like a huge hoss battle.
Yeah. It's always weird. I feel like at a certain, like with Big Show versus Khali, that was just a weird match just because Kali's not as athletic as, or not, doesn't put off that being able to do as much as the Big Show.
Or a lot of people.
Yeah.
He's just like an awkwardly built dude and doesn't really. And Big Show is like legit, yeah, like very, very athletic. And I mean, now is definitely like an age of smaller guys. But the Attitude Era was definitely like an age of like.
Yeah, that was my, like, I grew up, like, I was born in '87, so I was like, I knew who Macho and Hulk and Warrior were growing up, but then my older cousins got into the Attitude Era, and that's where I got in, like, post WrestleMania 14. Like, I hated Triple H, I hated Vince, I hated those, like, with a passion, because I was always like, oh, like, come on, like, stop stripping Austin of the title, like, he just needs to be the champion forever.
Warrior was an interesting one to kind of like be growing up watching, because I loved the Ultimate Warrior. You know, I mean, you just see him and then you hear the music and you can't help but get pumped up, and he has such a cool look. But then I also remember watching like Wrestling Superstars or Wrestling Challenge and being so embarrassed to be a fan of his list.
Oh, jeez.
Promos, because I was like, I hope no one comes downstairs and listens to what this guy's saying, because it just sounds like such ridiculous nonsense. I mean, yeah, like Piper. Piper, I was a huge fan of in the Attitude Era. So if you want to talk about Attitude Era, like I was all about DX. Was all about Austin, all about Rock. You know what I loved about the Attitude Era? The factions. I was a huge fan of factions.
The factions were great.
Yeah, and it was like top guy factions.
Yeah, and then you had the Job Squad.
And
underrated. The Job Squad, as in, like, that's an underrated, like, that was such an underrated team. Like, they would start putting like the union they put together for like a couple weeks.
Second, yeah. It was the Shamrock Test, Mankind, and Big Show, right?
Yeah, and it was like
2x4s.
Yeah, and it was always like, it was such a weird way to transition it into revealing that McMahon was the higher power.
And I guess, like, did you ever listen to the Pritchard podcast about like who was initially supposed to be the higher power?
No, I listen to his every once in a while. I've listened to way too many podcasts to be following everyone's. But what did he say was supposed to be the
Christopher Daniels?
Oh, I think I'd heard that from. I think Christopher Daniels was on Jericho's podcast,
and he was talking.
He said that, yeah, but that would have been cool just with the whole gimmick.
Yeah, I mean, I would have at the time I would have had no idea who Christopher Daniels was, and he's like legit, like especially at that time, he's like a small dude.
Mm-hmm.
So it might have been like a little bit weird to be like, oh, who is it? I remember rumors are flying around it's going to be Jake the Snake.
Oh yeah, that would have been good if it was a different time period, just with where he was at.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I love the Nation. Trying to take a look. I mean, that was like a huge time for tag team wrestling, also, and I was always a huge fan of tag team wrestling. And
it's so weird that, for as much as everyone says Vince hates tag team wrestling, he gave him a lot of time, but that must have just been the desperation to being like, we're getting killed by WCW, like,
maybe.
Let him do it.
I mean, it was like, you think about it, like, like Dudley's, Edge and Christian, and Hardy's, but it was stacked. You had the Acolytes turned to the APA. You had Too Cold. They held the belts. The
Radicals. I don't know if because I know they would tag here and there, but
yeah, they eventually came in. You had the New Age Outlaws. You had
Double J and Owen.
Yeah, Double J and Owen. Earlier on, you would have like the return of LOD and the Headbangers and stuff like that. But they were kind of like jobbing out like by the time that the really cool tag teams came in, and it was like this constant rotation of really great tag team wrestling. It was kind of like when I grew up as a kid. You just had like it was the Bulldogs, Heart Foundation, Demolition, Powers of Pain, the Islanders. Like, it was just like a ton of really great tag team wrestling. And you've got some great tag team wrestling now. It's just I think that the division doesn't get as much of a spotlight. It's like the street is great.
They need to start giving them like not just don't give them the opening show. Like like at least let them open the show or be like before intermission, like just like give them a decent spot where they can show their stuff like that people are gonna watch. No offense, I don't watch the kickoff show really unless it's like when Zach and Kurt were up for the titles, it was like I got to watch this part of the show because.
But you do have good teams, right? I mean, like you have Viking Raiders who are unbelievable. Oh
yeah, I was a big fan of them, man.
And yeah, I know they're awesome. And I think that like NXT does a really great job of, having a healthy tag team division. But yeah, would love to see a little bit on the main roster. I think that's kind of been missing out. But AEW really seems to be really pushing a lot for their for a healthy tag team division, which is I mean, considering that like two of the guys who run it are one of the greatest tag teams of all time. So.
Exactly. And then kind of transitioning from the wrestling portion to the other thing that you do is doing the copy for Masters of the Universe. Was that as an 80s kid, was that a dream come true? Like, were you just like that is like you are literally next to starring in like a He-Man movie? You're just like,
well, I actually, so, there has always been kind of like these murmurs for a while of like, when is Masters going to get relaunched? At the time I was working on WWE and I was also doing the copy for Minecraft and then like one of our smaller in and out brands. But I told my manager, I was like, when Masters gets relaunched, I want to be the writer for that. I want in on that brand. They're like, well, do you think that you could handle WWE and motu at the same time? I was like, yep.
Yes. Yeah, just say yes.
Yeah, and I mean it's an easy balance. I think for some people it would be hard. Like if you're not brand familiar, either one of those brands it's a beast. But if you're familiar with the characters, if you're familiar with the vernacular, it's like all you need is like a little bit of a refresher course of like when did this happen, or if I want to put this in. So I am able to juggle it. A little bit of the Barry Horowitz.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I mean, a total dream come true. Especially since we're doing the mini comics. Also, unlike the WWE Masters, doing the mini comics on that. Also,
whose idea was that to mesh those two together?
That was initially introduced by a designer who is no longer there. He wanted to reclaim the signature form factor, but with more articulation. He's like, got WWE, so maybe we could reintroduce this form factor and reclaim it through this license. I mean, the brand completely makes sense. This was also around the time when we were seeing Funko start to put out the DC. I forget the name.
Like the Savage World or whatever, and then they had like the horror ones too.
Yeah, I don't really like those all that much.
No, but I think I was like, I might get the Batman, but then I was like, yeah. But I ended up getting the. I think this is my favorite of the Masters of the Universe until I get the Austin mailed to me.
Oh yeah,
the Undertaker one. Like that was.
You had it glow in the dark.
Yeah.
It's in the dark.
Exactly. I like held it up to the light like a little kid again, and I shut all the lights off. I was like,
and you got the Snake Mountain.
I didn't. I missed the thing, but one of the fellow major marks was like, "Hey, I got the thing. I just want the Hogan, so the ring and the Austin are for sale." So I hit him up. It's like, I'll take the Austin right away.
I think that they're. Oh, okay. I think that they're back on regular sale. If
Yeah, if I had a room for another ring, I'd definitely get that because I'm like that ring looks awesome. Which it's the one behind you, that
It
one
is.
just with the
It,
snakes.
you can actually stack them.
Oh, nice. So you can have the instead of the three cages, you have the three rings of dude.
That's right. That's right. Um, uh, yeah, I mean, so I think it just like eventually got repitched. I forget the exact process. I'm sure that Ozer had a strong part in that. He's a huge Masters fan and huge wrestlings fan and huge toy collector, and he's on the marketing team. Um, so I'm sure that he was able to. I'm sure that was largely his doing. So we got that kicked off. It's been a year now, I think, right? Since Wave
Has
One
it?
hit.
I think so because then you guys were the one that Zach and Kurt or Matt and Brian posted at the Comic Con. That's when you guys released like the New Day pictures
Bases.
and
That's
like
right. Yeah,
the Macho Man, and I think you did Rock and Taker that like you did Wave
that's
Two with that. So it's been about
it's
about a
been
year.
about a yeah. And this is like the season that the first Origins figures are starting to launch, which is kind of following the same form factor. And there's like some tool sharing also with that, which is kind of cool. It's good for both brands. That's like, now if we're doing a Masters figure and we have an idea that can we do that? Is it in the tooling budget? Maybe the Masters of the Universe team has already created that figure, so we'd be able to borrow some of the parts. Similarly, on the other side, if we've already tooled up some pieces in Masters of the WWE universe, then the motu team can say, okay, so now we can use this, and it becomes a nice little balance.
Nice. That must have just been a great email that you got. It's like combining your two copyrights.
It's incredible. Yeah, no, absolutely love it. And the fact that we're like doing the mini comics thing, I was like, how are we going to do it? Because it's just like one piece of paper folded in half. But I feel like that it works because we like get a little bit in. Like I've got the Jake the Snake one.
Oh, nice.
So we kind of have got the
Little backstory.
well, yeah, it's got like his stats. I'm a big stats guy. That's the one thing that I miss on like on the AEW back panel is I know that Brian had mentioned he's like he likes that it's clean, but
Yeah.
to me, I want to know like how if I'm playing with these figures and I'm announcing them to the ring, where's he from? How much does he weigh? I want to
You
know.
gotta know these things. You have to know him as an announcer.
You have to know, right? Exactly. I think like a little bit of story also helps, especially for like lesser known guys. Tells you like a little bit about the personality. So you have like the stats, and on these we've got their superstar powers, and we can't say weapons, so they have foreign objects.
Oh, okay. But the foreign
And
object thing, I think that brings it back to the old school wrestling too. Like, of just like, oh, it's a foreign object. He's got a foreign object.
and then we managed to fit in these like cool little stories. If you notice at and then we've got like little Easter eggs. So we've got like Macho Man tied up in the rope there with
Oh,
the
nice.
yeah, that was like a must-have. And it's amazing like the nice little bit of story that we're able to get in just like 4 or 5 panels. Whereas like the Masters one, I do wish they were like I know that a lot of people have been saying they wish that it was longer. I also wish it was a little bit longer. The
Yeah.
original were like I want to say about twice the size. They were like a sizable mini comic.
Like they used to do in like the Spawn comic. Remember the Spawn would like the figures would have a comic book in the back, and it was like a mini. So was it like about that size? Oh.
It's this size. It's like the same size. So this
Oh,
was.
I thought you meant it was just larger.
Oh no.
Okay.
No. Oh no. It's like the same size like mini comic, but this one is like, it's it's got enough for like a story, but and the reason being is, I mean, there's like cost to everything.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, little mini comics are more expensive to produce now than they were back in the 80s. So we're not able to just be like, we're gonna have a 17-page mini comic.
Yeah, that would be cool though, to be able to put the whole story, like once you guys have the waves out, like eventually do like, because it seems like it's an interconnecting story between each of the little 1-page comics. So it's like that would be cool to eventually get it so it's like all tied together, where it's like like you literally, it's like basically a pay-per-view for Masters of the Universe or Masters of the WWE Universe.
You know what I'd like to do, and I don't think that I ever get a chance to it, but if I had it my way, I'd like to do that, but then also have like a little bit of that mortar in between to fill the gaps in between the story, because they do weirdly interconnect, and then you have to use your imagination of like, oh, what happened between this story and that story. So to kind of have a little bit of transitional material, I think would be great. And I think that by the time we get to the end of this, we would have had enough story where if we were to put it all together, it probably would make about the size of a full comic book.
Nice.
So, I mean,
because that could be like a SEC exclusive or NYC, something where it's like exclusive, because that would, as soon as you slap exclusive, but it's also a comic book, like people eat that up. Like I'd be first in line to be like, oh, I need this.
Yeah.
And I need 50 variant covers.
That's what killed the industry in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. People forget the 90s too quickly. It's like, don't forget Jim Lee's X-Men. Like, I love that, but how many covers do you need?
All of those variant covers.
And I have them all. Like, no. Or like the death of Superman, and it's like people need to stop like speculating and the like popping the bubble with that, like oversaturation. Like that's what kills the, like, as in that, not like kills the rarity of things, but
yeah, it's like it's when you have too much of a rare thing, it no longer becomes rare. It just becomes like Yeah,
I remember I watched like a History Channel thing on comic books, and someone on there said a really good quote where he said people in the 90s didn't understand that the reason the Golden Age and Silver Age were so rare was because people's parents threw them out. But now those people that now like see that the one person who hung on to their comic book sold it for a couple $100,000, then the new comics are going to be like, they quadruple the amount that they're putting out.
So legend has it that so when I first started out my career, I worked for Diamond Comic Distributors back in Baltimore, and the guy who owns that is Steve Jeppy, and he owns a bunch of businesses in Baltimore. Diamond Comics,
big name, right? A big name in the
Baltimore Magazine. He owns Diamond Select Toys. He's a minority owner for the Baltimore Orioles. He's a very well-known name in Baltimore. So the story is that he first accumulated his fortune when he was a mailman, and he would and he was a comic collector, and there would be like, he would have people in his room be like, my husband died and he left all these comics and I don't have a need for you. I'll give them to you for a penny. It wound up being all these like really old books. I don't have like any verification for that, but that's
that's the exciting story.
Yeah, that's the way that the story goes. And I mean, he wound up being like, I know that before like getting into all this, he definitely did start a small businessman. He opened up Jeppy's Comics, which I remember from the Inner Harbor. Eventually moved out of the Inner Harbor, and then just kind of like built up from there. But yeah, I mean, all the stuff that wound up one person's trash is another person's treasure. I mean, in the case of comics,
literally, like just like that, just like I feel like with any kind of collectibles, with like comics, action figures, video games, even VHS and DVDs now. Like like if you have a wrapped Ghostbusters VHS, like, or in really good condition, you could sell it for a good amount of money because people want that, because like, I'm a huge Ghostbusters fan. Like I first saw it on VHS. I want a nice one for my display.
Yeah, my mom was one of those where she was like, you're too old for toys. We're gonna going to give your toys away. Super heartbreaking for me, which I think is one of the reasons why all of
Yeah.
this is my thing. So, now she says, well, if I knew that all that stuff was worth so much money, I wouldn't have had you throw it out. And then I was like,
but you didn't ask me.
you didn't ask me, one, but two, I don't think, like, those toys were
No.
beaten to hell.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would have been worth any money. My LJN King Kong Bundy did like Superfly splashes off the top of the blue steel cage and smash the LJN ring. I don't think that they're going to be worth too much money.
Oh man! Speaking of King Kong Bundy, I grew up like the first couple years of my life. Like my family's mainly from South Jersey, and my cousin swore that King Kong Bundy lived down the road from him, and we'd always be like, I'd be like, no. And then now I'm older, I'm like, maybe he did. I should have gone down the street to check.
See, it's totally possible because I know that he was from New Jersey.
Yeah.
I know some people in New Jersey who had kind of similar stories where it's like, oh, they met him. They said he was like a really nice guy. I mean, he does seem like someone where it's like would be completely like if King Kong Bundy lives down your street, it's like he is completely you can't miss him.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like,
it's very hard to miss.
From a distance, you're like, yep.
The size especially if you're a wrestling fan though too. You're like looking at him like you were a kid again in the 80s. It's like
one of my buddies from camp, his I'm not sure if it was neighbor or just in his neighborhood was Big John Studd, and he has like
nice.
From like being backstage at wrestling stuff because like when they would go to local stuff, Big John Studd would like let them come backstage and meet all the wrestlers and stuff like that.
Man, that's awesome.
I know, right?
Right. What were you gonna say?
It's like, why couldn't I live across the street from Big John Studd?
Yeah.
I could have been a member of the Heated family.
Like you guys weren't taking advantage of it enough. To kind of wrap it up, I think this is our first like hour-long episode we've done in a while, and this is like a super special one. But let's I kind of want to end with what's your favorite like the Holy Grail that you have in your collection, the Holy Grail that you want to get and haven't gotten yet, and then what is your biggest purchasing regret?
All right, I'll start with that last one first. I've got I've got a couple of those. My purchasing regret is, or I guess it would be like non-purchasing regret. Like seeing stuff and it's like on clearance. Like I remember at our local puzzle zoo, they were just like, all the DC Universe stuff they're having clearance sale where it was like stacks and stacks of DCU figures for like $5 or like, buy 5 for 20 or something like that. And I was like, at the time I was kind of, I might not have had the money at the time to be like, I probably shouldn't spend that much money, but it's so much product out there that I can, that I can get it later. And, and then, you come back and it's gone. The one that I passed on that I was like, I can't even explain why I passed on it was I saw in a box it was a classic Superstars Brother Love. And
oh jeez.
I was just like, nah.
Yeah, I had. Oh my god, I had that with a Black Robe Flare.
Yeah, I know.
I was like, that was a Toys R Us one, right?
The Black Robe Flare?
Yeah, it was the Black Robe Flare. Was that an exclusive or was that just?
Maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not positive about.
I just remember seeing a Defining Moments Flare on like a Black Robe one in Toys R Us. Like this was like 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think like the year before they closed, and I was like, whatever. It's like I got the blue one, whatever. And now I'm like, no, like why did I just grab it?
Yeah, I mean, there really hasn't been anything that I've purchased that I've been like, I wish I didn't get that because I'll always find some way to repurpose it. As far as I was trying the Holy Grail in my collection. Man, that's hard because it's kind of like asking me. It's like ask you to choose your favorite kid. I've got. Hmm. Um. Do I? I'm not really sure if I can have anything that I can be like, like that's definitely my holy grail. I've got a few things that are like really really cool. Like I've got the classics Granomir the Wise. That was like the PowerCon exclusive. That one is really cool. Um, some of the like um, uh, some of like the cool Build-A-Figures I think are like really underappreciated from the end of the Masterverse line. I don't think that people really talk about. Like there was like this Lobo, this like
Yeah.
Lobo, I think is really
Is that the
badass.
one that came with the dog?
No, he didn't come with
Okay.
the dog. With like
That wasn't the STC one, right?
a set. Yeah, he came up with like a second head. Um, uh, for a little for a little while, my grail was like trying to like hunt down the demolition guys, but I finally got those. Now I think that my grail, if I had to say that I had a grail, it'd probably be two, and it would be the Chara Pro Bruiser Brody and the Chara Pro Stan Hansen. The Brody where he's got the chain, where he's whipping the chain, and the Hansen where he's doing the bull horns. Uh,
I
uh,
hate to say this, I would have sold you mine that I had that just sold like 2 weeks ago to a
well,
member of the Facebook group.
well, I've had opportunities too. It's just like they're so expensive that I'm just like, can I justify pulling the trigger
Well, I
on?
would have just done a trade.
Oh, okay.
Looking for more, like I would have done a trade because I'm like, oh, if you got stuff like that you're looking to get rid of, like, because I'm like, I just couldn't, I don't have the room to do it because I had a big idea to do like a Japanese section on one of my detolfs, but I'm like, I need to clear a room out to get another detolf in here to be able to do that. So I was like, yeah, like I'm gonna sell this Japanese.
Actually, okay, so so I'm gonna backtrack a little bit, and I think that so this is actually it's a holy grail for me for personal reasons, but it's one that people have, um, but not as many people as they want, and that was our very first Pete Dunne.
Oh, that's a great figure.
Well, and the reason why is as soon as I saw Pete Dunne in the UK, in the UK tournament, and just kind of seeing his character, I was immediately like I was bugging Bill so much.
Yeah, like we gotta do it. You gotta do one.
I was like, I was like, so we're gonna do a Pete Dunne soon, and he was just kind of like, I was sweating I was sweating Bill.
Yeah.
To do Pete Dunne for a while, and when Bill started to design him, he was like gracious enough to like kind of be like, hey, like he brought like a prototype sample, and he's like, hey, this figure, you wanted it so much, I want to make sure that it's meeting your standard, so it makes you happy, and and so to kind of like have like a little bit of care every single that step of the way, and to get a figure that I was like nudging
Wait, is
Bill.
that the prototype?
No.
Oh,
This is
okay. I didn't know if they let you have the prototype. Like, oh,
no. I don't have anything like that. But otherwise, I would be in deep trouble.
no. He's like, no, that's a regular figure.
Yeah, no, it's just a normal figure. But I mean, Bill would like show it to me like along the way. So it feels like something that was very personal that I had like. I'm sure like eventually would have gotten around to doing Pete Dunne. We've already done two elites.
But how popular that he was at that time, like I feel like that was a rare. Like everyone complains, like, oh, it's too like you always bring it out late. But that I feel like that just hit at the right moment. Like of when he was like, holy crap, this guy is like people started getting behind him more, like as in like getting on NXT and being a name in America to having that elite.
For sure. I mean, you think about like the Sanity guys, like when Alex Wolf came out with his, like I think that by the time the Eric Young figure came out, I think their gimmick was done.
Yeah,
Which is a shame. The figures are great. Um, Yeah, I mean, so much of my stuff is like I don't have a collection. Like I see you've got like Hasbro's back there and stuff like that.
Yeah, I have this main one though is just like the pod stuff, and then I have Attitude Era,
Nice.
uh, Vince getting stunned. I have my factions down here, DX and NWO. I need to get a good Kevin Nash. And then I got my macho stuff down here, and I have a bunch of stuff I need to get another detail for.
Yep.
But yeah, I have like the '80s up there with like uh, Mean Gene, Hogan, Andre. I need to get a blackstrap Andre because
That's
that was like his early day Andre.
yeah. I mean, I don't have a lot of like the throwback stuff.
Yeah,
A lot of my stuff is like a lot more contemporary, with the exception of the Chara Pros, which, you know, being a member of the major pod community
mm-hmm.
and being friends with Brian and Matt, you know, you kind of get sucked into things like that.
Yeah.
So so I initially was like, okay, I want to get some Chara Pros, but I want to get guys that I know. So it's like, you know, I got the Muda, I got Liger, I got Ultimo Dragon, I got Chono, yeah, guys like that. So I would really love to have a Hanson and a Brody. I just need to be, because one like the Brody is almost as much as a Sentinel.
Oh yeah, that Brody one's. Oh my gosh, just like it's like a Sheik almost, like the original Sheik, or not the
Yeah,
Sheik,
no,
Tiger.
the Tiger Jeet Singh.
Yeah,
Um, but I mean, I would say, I mean, one of the benefits from like working in the toy industry is, you know, you really have a lot of different, you know, you especially working on action figure brands like I do. You see so much of the product as it's being developed, so it's like that that itch is constantly being scratched. You know, you're
yeah.
seeing when we get to see kind of like samples for review, you get a chance to get your hand on it and finally get a chance to mess around with it. And you know, if there's something that you want to make a comment about, you can point something out as like, no, is this color right? Is the head a little bit off? Or just be like, wow, this looks absolutely incredible. I remember when Bill first got in the production sample for Io Shirai, and he made it
Oh
a
God,
to
chef's
call.
kiss right there.
He made it a point to call Steve and I, and just because he was so proud of himself. He's like, look, it is amazing. It's an amazing
But
figure.
it also feeds in that Bill only gives special attention to the Japanese wrestlers as a joke. You know, like that joke is like because the Asuka, the network special Asuka, and then the Io Shirai and the Kairi scene is just like
They're incredible. They're absolutely incredible. I mean, Bill does like a lot of like really incredible work. He really
yeah. You know,
isn't.
I just like to give him. I just like
But they give him.
giving him crap about it just because it's
He just
cool that he's so passionate about Japanese wrestling.
he is. He
Yeah.
is. He deserves to get some crap sometimes. Bill's like such a he's such an interesting dude where he's like, you know, on sometimes, you know, as you know, he's seen, he can kind of be like, you know, a little bit surly, but he's got a very sincere heart.
Yeah.
Like, you know, for example, like how the Pete Dunne thing and how he knew that it was important to me, so he's like, here, check it out,
Yeah.
and you know, let me know how you feel about it. He doesn't do that often, but he knew that figure was
Like he knows he picks his moments where it's like, you know, like I don't know. I just feel like he's seems like a very introverted kind of guy, just from what I don't know. He just seems like when he's talking like to the public and stuff, but
he
that he knows, you know, he opens up once you get to know him. I feel
he is a walking contradiction.
like.
I love Bill. Yeah, man is a walking contradiction in every single sense. I'm very happy and very lucky to work with him, to work with Steve, to work with all of our team actually, on both of our brands. Uh, you know, to have people who just like really care a lot about what they do. It's something very special to be a part of. And I really feel like now, like, I think that everyone who's a collector should take a step back and just appreciate the time that we're in action figure collecting, because it really feels like we're in the middle of a golden age.
Yeah, it really is. Like, just because it literally, oh, I can't find it in the store. I'm gonna go on a Facebook group, or I'm gonna look on eBay, or I'm gonna look on Let Go, or I'm gonna look on Mercari, and it's like, if you can't find it, you don't. Not but like before, where it's like you have to go to every day to the store to check, or you have to send in, cut out like 10 proofs of purchases, mail it in, get the figure. Or like, oh, it's like I have to, you know, like they just didn't distribute to my store, so I'm never gonna see it.
Yeah,
So.
I think that's absolutely true. I think that like people, I think I've noticed this a lot with like wrestling figure collectors over this whole quarantine COVID experience. They're starting to finally learn about like how to do some online shopping. Feels like it was like a little bit of a rough transition at first. Now people are starting to understand it a lot more in exactly the ways that you said, because there are so many opportunities, and it's not a matter of like, distribution problems, or or, oh, they're not shipping it to my store, or it's like, there's a will, there's a way.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many different ways that that you can find the figure that you want. You just need to have a little bit of.
Yeah, I feel like that's also, though, with what we were saying about how the ability to get stuff has gone so high up, like the availability, also the patience has gone like
way down.
Way down, yeah.
We're a one-click culture now.
Mm-hmm.
If I can't get it, and I've been subject to that too. We all have. I remember trying to get the Pulse exclusive Armorer, and it was in my cart, and I guess that a lot of people were on Pulse. This is probably like at one of the Star Wars reveals days, and it was spinning and spinning, and then eventually it was like, it was gone, and I was upset. So it's like, I get it. People have been. I saw a GIF of I can't remember it exactly, but the gist of it was like people who are trying to get PS5s. Like, Walmart and Target, and toy collectors are just like, yep, welcome to
welcome to our world. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. So as we kind of finish up, what do you have? Anything you want to plug? Anything you want them to, like, people to check out?
I mean, Elite lines and the whole WWE lines, the Origins lines, of course. We've got some cool stuff coming for everything. There's some really cool stuff down the way. You can follow me on Instagram, yes, really Rob, Twitter, Robert in 3D, I'll kind of close out with this. I've gotten some questions from people about like, I love toys. How do I get into the industry? And my the way that I got in was started out in Diamond Comics in a customer service position with the intent of trying to work my way up into a writer's position. So I would just say, find a way to get your foot in the door of anything, and you might not get exactly where you want to, on the first shot, but if you just kind of like get your foot in the door someplace and build towards it and have that goal, then eventually you'll get there. So
I feel like that's a great message to end with here.
Yeah.
So, all right, thank you so much for giving me your time. And
it was great talking with you, man. I'm glad that we had a chance to do this. This was fun.
Exactly. I'm going to keep you on just for a second after I stop recording, because I want to ask you a question I'm not going to put on the episode. All right. See you guys. Peace.